We have another NHL signing, another RFA has come to terms. The Canucks and Jake Virtanen have hammered out a contract. We'll discuss the details coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some more breaking news from around the NHL. The Vancouver Canucks and Jake Virtanen have come to terms on a new contract. This contract will hold an average annual value of $2.55 million and is a 2-year contract. So this is a little bit cheaper than what was being reported. I mean, the reports indicated before there wouldn't be more than 3, but probably pretty close. So I must say this is a pretty decent deal for the Vancouver Canucks to hopefully keep Virtanen in the fold. I know there's still a lot of debate about his future and how long he'll remain with the organization. Would he be traded? Lots of uncertainty over what was going to happen with Jake Virtanen this offseason. So we'll see if this indeed does keep him in the fold for a couple more years and if he can continue to build upon last season. I mean, he did certainly have better offensive output. Or maybe he can continue to do that and more and continue to develop into the power forward they were hoping they were getting when they drafted him. Now, this does put the Vancouver Canucks technically, and I stress technically, over the salary cap by about $1.5 million, but there are some pretty simple options here that can certainly solve that. I mean, based on CapFriendly.com, that's what they show. They show them being $1.5 million over. However, they could demote Louis Eriksson to the American Hockey League and get relief of about $1 million. They could do the same thing with the contract of Sven Baertschi. So there we got $2 million right there. So that puts them technically back in line. Now, the other thing, too, is this is their last RFA to be looked after here. And once you had an RFA file for arbitration, once those are settled, you do get a second buyout window, which will open up in 24 hours' time. And they will have 24 hours to make a decision if they're going to use any additional buyouts. And so there is a lot of talk that Brandon Sutter could become a perfect buyout candidate for them, more so than the other players based on the initial cap relief that they'll get for the upcoming season. Like I mentioned before, Louis Eriksson, if he's bought out now, they only get about $333,000 in relief for next season, which really isn't all that much. They'll get better relief by putting him in the minors if need be. Wait another year to buy him out, unless they can find a trade for him, which we know they're going to continue to do. And his camp and Louis Eriksson and his agent are going to continue to try to find a trade too. But it's pretty unlikely that it's going to happen. So if it happens, great. They'll get a lot of relief likely. They might have to retain some of his money, but that's okay. But more than likely, he stays with them for another year and then either gets demoted or maybe gets bought out or traded next year with 1 year left on his contract. We'll see how they decide to use him, but it's pretty much a guarantee that he'll end up in the minors because there's just really no way they can keep the rest of the roster intact here. Ideally, that's not going to give them a full roster either. If they take away 2 players going down to the minors, it does give them 13 forwards and then 6 defensemen on the books and a couple goalies. So they likely would want to have another defenseman or 2 around, carry an ideally 22, 23-man roster. If they want to bring up any other defenseman, it would probably be a guy like Olli Juolevi, maybe Rathbone Rafferty. When you put all those guys in the mix with the cheaper contracts, they could put a couple more of those deals in there and still kind of be, right around the cap max. Also, the other thing that we don't know that will have an impact as well is the health of Michael Ferland. He could very well end up on long-term injury reserve, and if he does, they'll get extra relief that way. So between demoting Eriksson and demoting Baertschi, that gives them enough to technically be compliant. And if they want to have a bigger roster, they can either buy out Sutter or have Ferland go on LTIR if that needs to be the case, depending on what his health is, which we don't know yet. So they do have some options without actually making any trades or doing any moves that would be considered a salary cap dump. The only way they'd have to do that is if they had to try to make any upgrades and go after any other big names. If they've been linked to players like a Mike Hoffman, for example, to try to replace what they had in Tyler Toffoli. But it's going to be tricky to do. So we will see what happens here, but they might very well take advantage of that next buyout window. With all these other demotions, they won't be in too bad a shape overall with the salary cap. So let me know your thoughts on this new contract for Jake Virtanen. I think it's pretty fair myself. I'd love to know what you think in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you know it's any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.